Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff, and you are with me today on a Saturday watching another edition of the Schwa Mill. As always, on Saturdays, what we do is we take a look at your pronunciation, trying to craft your accent. We take a look at how you're saying certain sentences, and then we give suggestions for how we can make them sound even more natural in American English. I am obviously in a very different place. This is my childhood home. So this is visiting my parents for the weekend. So this may be a slightly different version. I will do my best though to keep things as normal as possible. Hello to Shok checking in as always. Great to see you. Hello to Emmanuel as well. Okay. But the name of the game does not change. We are taking a look at your pronunciation files. If you are new, this is your first time watching the stream, you can go to this link here. Which I just put into the chat box. Once you're there, you're going to see a couple different options for sentences to say, including this first one here. To put this in the chat box as well. And so this first one is, you won't see a word of your opponent. Take a look, especially at that RTH combination. I'm curious to see how you guys say that. Hello to Rumeza checking in again. That's great. All our Saudis are checking in. And we also have our second sentence. This one here. So you won't say where their opponent, or would you happen to have this in another color? And we're going to talk about, to start, just what are some things you can do to say this sentence to get it sounding, or these sentences, to get them sounding more natural, things you want to be mindful of when you're talking. And I do always have to preface this by saying that, we're taking a look at these sentences outside of any context, right? We have no idea what the situation is that's causing us to say these things. So everything that I say, all the advice I give, is kind of like for a neutral situation that's context free, that exists in a vacuum. So things may change in different situations, naturally. Okay. So be sure to send in your pronunciation files so we can take a listen to what you're doing. We'll talk about stress. Don't worry. I don't have my whole setup with me, so I'm kind of working on the fly here. So bear with me today. Now this is impressive. No picture, no name, and also nothing in the message. I am very much impressed by that. I would have no idea how to even do that. I would have no idea. Okay. But let's begin by taking a look at our first sentence. And again, so you won't see a word of your opponent. You won't see a word of your opponent. So again, there's a variety of different places where you could put stress. If I were going to stress things though, I would probably stress opponent. And you could also put a stress on won't. So you could have two thought groups here. It's like, you won't see a word of your opponent. You won't see a word of your opponent. You could also stress it as like, you won't see a word of your opponent. So in theory, you could just have one stress and just stress on opponent, and that would work okay as well. Yeah. Of course, in some context, if you really want to emphasize on the person, like you won't see a word of your opponent. Okay, someone else might, but you no. I guess there's some things to keep in mind on for stress. Okay. I'm really curious about this. I'm gonna be doing some research when I get a moment. Yeah, it's hard. We've been super busy. We've been traveling. Like I said yesterday, we drove for like 10 hours. We arrived Philadelphia. My son's with me. My parents haven't seen him in a while. So imagine, adults when they haven't worked with kids for a long time. That can always be interesting. Let's again going back to our sentence. Some things you want to pay attention to besides stress. Linking. So you won't see. Notice for won't see. Most likely on won't see for that T sound, it's probably going to be a held T. Okay, so instead of won't see, much more likely you're like won't see, won't see. Okay, so hold it, tighten your throat, don't let air through. Won't see. See ya, see ya. Notice that slight ya sound that's going to link from that E to that Y. It's like see ya, see ya. Okay, so just a note on that. You don't want to say like see it's more see ya. Just try to smooth that out. Okay. Worthy your opponent. Worthy your opponent. It's like opponent. Worthy your opponents. Just a quick note there too on that R at the end of worthier. Some things here You sound exhausted. It's hard too because I was doing some yard work and my allergies are not the best, and my allergies tend to give me sinus infections. So that also is not helping. Lots of things kind of compounding one thing on another thing on another thing. And then I was editing a video, and the video was having all kinds of. So, actually, speaking of which, so we do have a video coming out tomorrow. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if I can get time to edit it. We're doing a collaboration, so there is actually an accent of British English that I have found. It actually has a lot of similarities with American English. So keep an eye out for our video tomorrow. We're doing a collaboration with a British English instructor named Ed. He's great, and I think you guys will learn some interesting things about some different variations of British English and American English that are obviously different, but still have some similarities. So please keep an eye out on that. It's a fun collab video we're doing. So keep an eye out for that. Other things are standing out here, so you won't see a worthier opponent. I think in terms of linking, those are the big things I would identify. Pronunciation wise, let's talk a little bit about worthier. Okay, so for worthier, what I would say, this is, we mentioned this in the previous video, talking about some tricks you could do with those THs, because you honestly don't always need to have that contact up here. And worthier might be one of those words that you find a little easier to pronounce if you keep the tip of your tongue down. Okay, and instead try to raise like the mid back of your tongue a little bit. It's like worthier, worthier, so I'm not saying worthier. You certainly can make a standard TH. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is just an alternative that might be a little bit easier with that R sound coming before the TH. So instead of worthier, more like worthier, worthier. Okay, notice that the TH sound is much more muffled, but because the stress is in a different spot, it's okay if you reduce it a little bit more. It's just no worthier, worthier. Other things you want to watch out here for won't, for that O sound. It's like oh, whoa, oh, whoa. Make sure you're not doing like oh, like oh. It's not whoa. It's more won't, you won't, you won't. And also that you can get reduced too, right? So you don't need to say like you won't. You can say like you won't, you won't, you won't. It's like a quick yeah, yeah type sound. Just so you know on that. Okay, Emmanuel's saying they're excited for the video. I'm excited for the video too. It's a lot of fun to make. Yeah, so that's the main things I see for that first sentence. Curious to see how you guys do with that. Second one, relatively common sort of question. It's like, would you happen to have something plus your object? Okay. It's like, would you happen to have, this is another color. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Oh, mention about pitches. Let's talk about pitches in a moment for that previous sentence. We'll do both. Would you happen to have this? Would you have this? I think you could either put a stress on happen or have. I wouldn't do both. I would pick one. It's like, would you happen to have this? Or you could say, would you happen to have this? Okay, either one of those I think could work for pitches in another color. And most likely color would get your second stress. Another color, okay. Just kind of taking a point from our previous sentence. So like we mentioned for worthy, you keep that tip of your tongue down. Same thing with color, treat it more like a dark L sound. Keep that tip of your tongue down. Raise that mid back of your tongue instead. It's like color, instead of color, more color. I'll give you a little bit more natural sound. Another color. And also speaking about TH sounds, that can be a tricky phrase there at the end. Another color. This is again another situation with that THER where keeping the tip of your tongue down might actually make it a little easier. Another color, instead of another color. Okay, that might make it a little bit too disjointed. Okay, a little bit harder to understand. Okay, that's just a note about that. Other sounds here that can be a little bit tricky. Wood tends to be difficult because what a lot of people want to do is they want to make their lips super round, like wood or like wood and things like that, and that's just not necessary. Again, notice how I'm saying it. Wood. Notice how straight my lips are here, right? Wood. Okay. Because just a note there. For that sound too, this is not the schwa sound. This is the sound, like in book or good. Okay, so that back of your tongue is high. That front of your tongue is down. It's like w. I would practice that combination to make sure you're not rounding your lips too much. Okay. And other things, which you happen to have this happen, sound. Okay, like in cat, happen. Okay, just know that. Same thing with have. A lot of people are doing like half, but again, American English more have. Would you happen to have this? Okay. Notice also too that linking between the have and this, like have this. So that V sound, contact with your lower lip, and then it's gonna open up and slide the tongue up. It's like have this, have this, have this, have this. Guess just note on that. Watch out for that linking. And other things here too. So lots of schwa sounds. Okay, I see Emmanuel's asking about schwa. So color is going to have a schwa sound, okay? But so is the another. So basically you have like three schwa sounds almost in a row. It's like uh, or another color, It's like another color, another color. Because so you make sure you're not saying like another or color or like it's more another color. So just watching out for that. Tends to be a tricky little phrase there. Okay. Question here. Can you say is this like bottle water? Like bottle water? Is that what we're trying to say? That's actually that's a super common expression that was apparently like when people were talking about British English, it's like, can I have a bottle of water or like things like that. Whereas at least in the US, you're more like to like a bottle of water. Um, yeah, I definitely saw the sentence come up several times when we were doing some research. Yeah, but I would say bottle of water. But you could say bottle water, things like that. Other things here. Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color? Let's talk about pitches. Originally, I saw the sentence for a question about it for the previous one, so we'll start there. Hello, this is Zabeta checking in. I see you here. Great to have you. Okay. You won't see it. Again, it's hard with pitches because we don't have like context, but in general, pitches that I would be using for this, like you won't see, you won't see, you like you, I'd probably have that the lowest for that first thought group. Like you, then I would go up. Won't, then I would do C, kind of like at a middle point. Like you won't see, you won't see, you won't see. It's like that sort of progression. Da, 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 you won't see, and then a worthy or opponent. Worthy or opponent. Do you hear that? Worthy or I would do like 3 steps down. Worthy or opponent. And in fact, maybe even 4 steps down because that O on opponent, I would probably go even a little lower. Worthy or opponent. You won't see a worthy or opponent. Okay. In terms of pitches, that's kind of the main thing I would probably do there. If I had to guess. Okay. For the second sentence for pitch patterns, I think could be helpful. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen? It's like I think a lot of times when you hear this sort of phrase, relatively common expression, especially if you're like asking for help in a store or something like that. It's like, would you happen? Would you happen? Would you happen? It's like, would you happen? It's like make sure happen is your highest pitches. And then you can go down from happen, like happen to have this, happen to have this, happen to have this. Okay. Da, 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 da. That's kind of the pitch pattern you're looking for. Happen to have this. Would you happen to have this in another color? You have some options kind of related to pitch intonation a bit. Most likely, if this you're treating this as like a yes/no question, then you naturally would expect it to rise at the end. Another color. Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color? Okay. But maybe you're kind of using it more as a statement. I mean, yeah, it's a question, but maybe you're kind of treating it as a statement. Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color? Statement sounds a little firmer. Okay, basically saying that, hey, I don't want this. I need something different. Otherwise, I won't get it. Things like that. Okay. Great question about that. Pitches, other things. Emmanuel saying, happen to have. Can you reduce to the schwa? Happen to have. Yeah, for sure. I would encourage that. You don't want to say happen to have. It's going to be more happen to have. A lot of times, notice what happens with that T. Happen to have. So you can use a held T like happen to have. Or you can even make it like a fast D flap T. It's like happen to have, things like that. Okay, so a couple options there. Hopefully that makes sense. We have a doubt. I have an answer. Don't know if it's a good one, but I have one. Which is correct? Angry with me or angry on me? Angry with. Angry with. Another common phrase too, mad at. Angry with someone, mad at someone. Like they're mad at me. They're probably a little bit more common than angry with. Honesty. Okay. I'll take just a quick second to see if anyone has any questions about either of our two sentences. And again, if you're just joining our live stream, welcome. It's great to have you. Welcome back to the Schwa Mill, which we do every Saturday at this time, where we take a look at your pronunciation and we give some suggestions on things to can help you sound a little bit more natural, the American English pronunciation. Okay. Naturally, like I mentioned, I'm not in my normal spot, but my parents are nice enough to let me use this room. So thanks, Mom and Dad. Kudos to Mom and Dad. We'll start first sentence. Okay, let's do this. I want to share my screen and my sound because you guys don't want to hear me. You want to get some feedback on yourselves, and I completely understand that. So give me 1 second to get set up. Oh, let me add myself there, right? Again, it's not little, it's more little.
The G host was class.
Are you feeling that here, or here? All right, so we're taking a look at your pronunciation files, like I said. So let me share my screen. You're going to see, of course, I have my headphones on because I don't have my normal microphone with me. And let us share. Can I do what I want to do? Let's try it out. Okay. I think you guys are seeing what I need you to see. Let me put myself in here a little bit. Okay. I'm going to make myself a little bigger because you guys can see that. Okay. So like I said, we're going to take a look at your pronunciation files. When you send your files, this is basically the document that you see. And again, if you go to the top of the chat box, you're going to see the link to use. You can also look at the video description. Okay. So this is the document that you see. You're going to see that it gives you directions to check out vocab.com, which is a website that allows you to record yourself. And then you can send me the audio files. That way we can hear you. And that's what you see, all these links over here. That's what people are doing. Okay, so we're going to listen to your files, see what you're doing. If you have questions or comments about anything that I say, be sure to let me know so we can give you some clarity. We'll kind of just be bouncing around. Let's start with this one.
Do you happen to have this in another color?
Not bad. Play again.
Do you happen to have this in another color?
Okay. Especially like I think Emmanuel, I think this is you. I think this has a lot of clarity to it.
Do you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this? To me, something sounds a little different. I don't know. It sounds a little bit less muffled to me. I don't know. If you guys are regulars in the stream, let me know. But in terms of clarity, this sounds a little bit more. Sounds slightly clearer than some of the other audios I've heard.
Do you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this? I like that. I really like that part.
Do you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this? Okay. Would you happen to have this? Oh, well, am I not sharing? Hang on. Let me make sure I'm sharing my audio. Got you. Oh, because if I do it that way, I can't share my audio. Oh, interesting. I see. Sorry, I was assuming something. Okay, let me play that again. Sorry about that. Boost that.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Okay, let me know if that's better. Okay, in the chat, if you can let me know. If you guys are hearing that a little bit more. Hopefully you can. See, it says that sharing the audio now. Okay.
Would you happen to have this?
I really like that first part. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Things that I like.
Would you happen to have this?
I like that. Stress on happen. So keeping our stresses pretty controlled, I think is great. I think that's a natural place to put your stress.
Would you happen to have this?
I also like your linking with would you. It's like would you. It's like that j sound, very common when you have like a d that links with like a y sound again. Very typically makes a j sound. Very common. It's like would you.
Would you happen to have?
And you also reduce the u to y, so it's not would you. It's more would you. That's great.
Would you happen to have this in a
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? I would say maybe this sounds slightly exaggerated. You could probably tone it down just a little bit, but it's not a huge thing. I'm being very nitpicky.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Second half of the sentence, I think some of our schwa sounds kind of shifted into like ah sounds a little bit.
Have this in another color.
Another, like another. Make sure another. That O could be a little bit more schwa. It's like another.
This in another color.
Yeah, ana versus another.
This in another color.
Same thing with color.
The color.
Yeah, color versus color. It's not cooler. It's more color. It's not cool. Sounds to me like if you're doing that, cool. Maybe the back of your tongue's a little bit high. Cool. Yeah, it sounds to me like your tongue's a little bit too high. So it's kind of closing things off in your mouth. So you're getting like this cool versus
Another color.
color versus color.
Another color.
Color, another color. Yes, those are my big things, especially the second half of that sentence. Just watch out for your schwa sounds. I think that's going to be the biggest piece of advice I can give for that. Okay. But yeah, if you have other questions about that, let me know. Thank you so much for sending that. I appreciate it. Okay. Thanks also for letting me know that you can hear that a little bit better. I appreciate that. Schwa sounds a bit off. Yeah, it's I think it modify those schwa sounds and put that in the rest of the sentence. I think you'll be in good shape. I think it sounds really good. I think it's gonna sound really good. Okay. But yeah, I like that file. Let's take a look at our next one. Great way to start. Great way to start the schwa on a Saturday. That's good. Let's take a look at some more files. Oh, remember not to share the window. Let's bounce here.
And frankly, you won't see a worthier opponent than me, Joe. And don't you dare come on, man, me.
I think this is our hello to the singer. He's in I think our was this Trump again?
And frankly, you won't see a worthier opponent than me.
Just want to stop there really quick. Notice opponent. Watch out for that O sound. Instead a po, more a po.
Opponent named
Opponent. Could get a little bit more air through there. In general, in American English, you don't hear that O sound very often. Usually it's opponent.
a worthier opponent than me, Joe. And don't you dare come on, man, me. Me, Joe.
Yeah, let's look second half.
And don't you dare
I like to see like compare like how you're saying don't.
Joe. And don't you
Even like Joe, like compared to O sounds on Joe and don't. I like those.
Joe. And don't you
Don't versus
you won't see a worthier opponent than
yeah, because those just don't sound the same. I hear like Po versus Joe, and won't and things like that. It just sounds a little different.
a worthier opponent than me, Joe. And don't you dare come on, man, me.
The other big thing, of course, is going to be a little bit on man.
Don't you dare come on, man, me.
Come on, the man still sounds a little tense to me. Man
Come on, man.
versus man. Come on, man. Don't you dare come on, man. Me. I think especially as you get from that S onto that N, I think you could add a little bit more. Try to get more breath through. Try to open up the throat a little bit more still. Man. Okay. Another thing too is that again, we've talked about this before for some other sounds at the beginning of the video, but for those end sounds, try making that end sound like man. Keep the tip of your tongue down against the bottom of your mouth. Honestly, I can say man, and not get any contact with the tip of my tongue and the top of my mouth. Like when I say man, the tip of my tongue is staying low the entire time. No contact. I don't have any contact with the tip of my tongue or the middle of my tongue and the top of my mouth when I'm saying man. All the work is the back of my tongue rising and falling. So just kind of some things to keep in mind there. Yep. Okay, but just want to check the chat. Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know. And yes, it is. I'm 90% sure it is him, but I really don't have any ideas. One of my so my brother has a suspicion that it's actually one of his friends who's actually a native speaker who's just like pranking us and things like that. But I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny that suspicion, but I know my brother's been thinking that. But some of the features though still don't. And again, it could just be exaggerated features and things like that. So maybe that's why. But anyways, let's take a look at our next one. And by the way, if you're joining us, hi. Let me know if you haven't said hey yet. Just say hey in the chat. Just let me know you're here, alive, checking us out. Okay. If you're feeling brave, you can send us a pronunciation file. I'll show you how to do it. We'd love to hear from you. Give me 1 second. I will show you. If you go to the top of our chat box, it's at the very top. I put a link to our document. This is our document here. It'll give you all the directions up top to how you can send your own files. And maybe you're not feeling brave enough to do it today, or maybe you're watching us in the replay, and that's okay. We use this same link every single live stream. So in the future, if you want to send us, maybe today wasn't a good time, but maybe next time, you can go here and take a look. I usually update it on usually Thursdays or Fridays, depending if I'm traveling. Let's take a look at our next one.
You won't see Worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see Worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see Worthier opponent.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you have two stresses. Stressing won't and probably opponent.
You won't see Worthier opponent.
Won't see a worthier opponent. Probably, yeah, I guess would be opponent. Typically, again, when you have adjectives plus a noun, the stress falls on your noun. Okay. I think those stresses could certainly work.
You won't see
You won't see. I like what you're doing with, and John, I like what you're doing with pitches there. Like you won't see. You won't see. I like how you're lowering your pitch on C right after won't. Okay, something that can help make the stress words stand out a little bit more, lowering those pitches there. Also add some contrast to your speech, which is always great.
You won't see Worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent. I will say that it does sound a little bit flat. You could be dynamic. I think you're using some low pitches here, but you could probably play around with adding some higher pitches as well. It kind of depends on your goals too. There's nothing wrong. There's plenty of native speakers that kind of talk this sort of way, almost monotone. Okay. Just something to consider though, to make your speech a little bit more dynamic. If I had to identify a word to focus on,
You won't see Worthier opponent.
probably worthier.
You won't see Worthier.
Do you hear that? War versus where? I was actually just working with a student on this, which I think could be helpful. Okay, so compare like war versus forget the exact words we used. We could use these as an example. It's like war is that first one. War, in fact, and war. Gonna have the same sound. Okay, it's like war, like I wore a coat. Countries at war. The same sound. Those one have the same sound. But the second one, were, different sound, right? It's like war, were. No, still though, for war, you want to try to get a little bit more air through your throat because right now it's still sounding really closed off. Let me to demonstrate one more time. Listen to war here.
You won't see Worthier.
Ward versus where. Okay, so a couple things that I would recommend. Worthier. Some things that I think can be helpful for that. So firstly, what I would say is try to straighten your lips a little bit more. Where. Notice again, my lips are going this way. Where. So it's not war. Notice that also too, your lips are not round. Okay, it's not war. It's more war, really straight. War. Excuse me, trying to think. It's like war. I think you could also probably raise the front of your tongue a little higher. Were. So again, war. Okay, so keeping the lips straighter. Try not to round anything. Okay, so instead of worthier, more worthier. That would definitely be my big word to suggest. But in general, again, I like what I'm hearing. I think it sounds pretty good. If you have any questions about that, Marcus, I believe that was you. Be sure to let me know. But thank you for sending your file. We appreciate it. And our next one. Give me 1 sec. Your eyes almost shutting. Oh, no, I promise I'm not. I promise I'm okay. I promise. If I wasn't up to it, I would not be here. I promise I'm good. Let's go back to it.
You want your worthier opponent. You want your worthier opponent.
Yeah, I think the term stress is similar.
You want your worthier opponent.
We'll see it. Where's your opponent? You won't see.
You want your worthier.
You won't see. I do think for a won't, you could get a very tiny more amount of air through. I think it's extremely close.
You want your.
You won't see. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I could be very nitpicky. It's probably fine. I wouldn't be opposed to it having a little bit more air on that O sound. Well, you won't.
You want your.
You won't see. You won't see.
You want your worthier opponent.
I do like your linking from won't to see. I like that you're keeping that T sound held. You know, so it's not won't see. It's more won't see. I do like that aspect of it. I think it sounds pretty good.
You want your worthier opponent.
Trying to see, are you stressing worthier or opponent?
Worthier opponent.
A worthier.
Your worthier opponent.
You want to see a worthier opponent. You're probably stressing worthier, which certainly can work. You know, it's not as often that you see those adjectives stressed, but it certainly could if you want to emphasize the worthiness of the opponent. Then you could do that. I like your link with the R sound to the TH.
You want your worthier opponent. Your opponent. You want your worthier opponent.
Or do I? The more I hear it now, I'm like thinking like,
Wants your worthier opponent.
Worthier. Something seems kind of like catching a little bit. Like catching is like kind of like stopping the flow.
Wants your worthier opponent.
Worthier. I don't think it's like worthier. I don't think you're doing that, but it's leaning that way almost.
You want your worthier opponent.
Worthier. I would recommend say worthier again with the tip of your tongue down and hold it down. Worthier. Try to keep the tongue away from making contact with the top of your mouth or your teeth. Worthier. Just say that like 3 times, like worthier. Just try to get that a little bit smoother.
Your worthier opponent.
Yeah, that's probably gonna be my big thing.
You want your worthier opponent.
Yeah, besides that, I really don't have a whole lot to say. I would just experiment a little bit with those THs. Try to get used to making them in different ways, including with minimal to no contact. Just help with the flow.
You want your worthier opponent.
Yeah. I would also again note that again, stressing worthier can certainly work, but it's probably one of the less common options for that sentence.
You want your worthier opponent.
Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. I do like that sentence. Okay. Jesus, it's many people's weak points. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing I see with students in TH sounds is that people are kind of forcing them too much. You know, I think they know that it's a sound that their language may not have, and so they put a lot of time into it. They exaggerate the sound and make it really strong. But the reality is that, hey, like, not entirely necessary to do that. The TH is actually a pretty light sound. Okay, the more emphasis is going to be on the vowels around it. Okay. By the way, guys, as we're going through this and you're like, hey, like this feedback is actually maybe a little bit helpful, or like, man, I wish I could get suggestions or like feedback like this every single day of the week, just to let you know that we have a group on Telegram that's always taking new members. I think we get a couple new people every month. It'll be great to have you. And basically what we do every day is I post a group of words to say. I give a model. I send audio of myself reading it. Or we have another instructor too. Her name is Lenora. She's great. I've worked with her for years. She gives feedback as well. So you hear feedback from me, you feedback from her, and then you can send in your own audio files, and we listen to it, and we give you some tips to sound a little bit more natural in American English. It looks a little bit of something like this. Eel, please. I think your O sounds are a little bit tense. I'm getting a lot of O. Take off the T on center. Okay. So again, this group you can find every, let me scoot over here. Okay. You can find this at patreon.com/fluentamerican. You go there and you can get some pronunciation help every single day of the week. And I think you guys would enjoy it. Okay. Oh no, someone's reminding me to stay hydrated. I have a problem. I don't have my water. Coffee might be the perfect beverage. Oh God. I'm trying so hard, guys. Come on. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring up my cup because again, I'm not in my normal spot. I'm like all out of my routine. Like I don't have my lights, on my mic, I don't have my board. Like I don't have anything. I'm kind of going on the fly, and I do not have my water. So that's a problem. But I'm doing okay so far. If I need to take a break and run and get something, I will. Okay, but I appreciate that. Going back to your guys' files. This is what we just
You
heard.
want your Worthier.
Yeah, that's what we just heard. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, the first one.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Okay.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Here, one more time.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
You were really flowing there until one moment. I'm gonna play it again. Let me know where did the flow get disrupted a little bit.
Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color?
For me, like between another and color, there's just this pause that it's very slight. You know, I'm making a big deal about it, but you know, when you're talking and giving lots of sentences, it's these little things that can really stand out over time. You know, the more you talk. So I wouldn't have paused so long.
Color.
I'll back it up more.
Have this in another color.
Another color. It's like what you're doing is you have this little slight pause between another and color. And then also on color, you have this really strong first syllable. So you're doing like another color, another color. I'm exaggerating, of course, but like what this does is it kind of disrupts your flow.
Have this in another color.
Yeah, so I would lessen the pause between your stressed word and the word before it. Also, I would reduce your consonant. Try to get your vowel to take more emphasis.
Have this in another color.
So instead of another color or another color, another color, another color, I would say it like 3 times as fast as you can. Another color, another color, another color. Okay, just to try to weaken some of those consonant sounds because right now we're kind of taking over.
Would you happen to have this in?
Would you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this in?
Would you happen to have this? Yeah, you know, Joe, I like this. I think it sounds pretty smooth.
Would you happen to have this in?
I like your vowel sounds. I think it sounds pretty good. You could add a little bit more linking if you wanted.
Would you happen to have this in?
Have this? Have this? Would you happen to have this? Have this? A lot of times what you'll hear when people say that, like have this, a lot of times that V will almost get dropped. It's just like have this. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? But there's also nothing wrong if you say have this, have this. Nothing wrong with that either.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
I think last thing I want to hear again another color.
Have this in another color.
Another.
This in another color.
Something about color still.
This in another color.
And maybe it's just that the C is really strong. I was thinking maybe there's a schwa thing, but I think it could be actually just be the C. The consonant. Yeah. Andrew, I think it sounds good. Just take a look at those 2 things I identified. But nice work. Yeah, I like that. I like the sentence. I think it sounds good. Question here, how do you say turret? Turret. For instance, like what's the word like turn. Like for instance, the word turn. Just take off the end sound. Turn. And then it. Just like the pronoun it. Turret. Turret. Okay. Persian intonation. Let's listen again to the intonation patterns. Just because some of it sounds a little Persian doesn't mean it doesn't work in American English too. So here we go.
Would you happen to have this in
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have? Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? You know, I think that can work. I think people will read it that way or say it that way. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Another option you could do is if you just want to vary your patterns more. Another thing you may hear is like, would you happen to have this? Happen to have this? So instead of happen to have this, could you do like happen to have this? Happen to have this? Happen to have this? Just another option that you could use.
Would you happen to have this in another color? Happen to have this in
This. Would you happen to have this? So like kind of like a heavier falling intonation on this. Like, would you happen to have this?
another color?
Another color, another color. Another thing too with like another with pitches, you could do like drop, 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 like another, another, another. And actually, you would also drop for the first syllable of the next word too, like color, another color, another color, another color. Guess just some things that if you feel like your intonation pattern is too similar to Persian, playing around with those rhythms could help. Okay. Thank you for sending that, though. I do appreciate it. See, just want to check our next one.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
Okay, let's hear this one. It's from Miss Shoka Relief. All right, how about this one?
You don't see a worthier opponent.
I'm asking. It's really hard because I wrote the sentence and things like that, and I feel like if I didn't, and I just had to listen to this, would I understand it the first time?
You don't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah.
You don't see.
Yeah. See.
You don't see a.
Almost sounds like you don't. I would make the W sound on won't just a little stronger. Like you won't. You can reduce the U, that's fine. But I think you need a slightly stronger W sound on won't.
You don't.
Because I'm hearing you won't, versus you won't. Okay, I don't think it's going to take much, just a very, very, very slight W sound beforehand, just to make it slightly clearer.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier.
You don't see a worthier.
Kind of caught me off guard. It's like you say, worthier.
A worthier.
I was expecting the pitch to fall, but instead it went up.
See a worthier opponent. You don't see a worthier.
You won't see a worthier versus you won't see a worthier opponent. I think it can work. Another thing, just to kind of play around with pitches and things, I would suggest saying, see if you could start worthier with a lower pitch than a worthier. You won't see a worthier opponent. See a word. Notice that down, 3 steps down. See a word. So I'll just say in terms of practicing for pitches and things like that, I would also try that. Just trying to expand your range.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
Opponent. How about opponent?
See a worthier opponent.
Opponent.
Your opponent.
Opponent versus opponent. A very slight shift. I would really consider trying to just get a little bit more air through on that second O. Opponent. It's an opponent or opponent. Okay, because it just sounds slightly closed off.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, you could also on opponent you could end with the held T. So instead of opponent, you're not like opponent. You can use more of a held sound. Opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent. Just a note there.
You don't see a worthier opponent.
Okay. Yeah, those are going to be my big suggestions there. Get your W sounds just slightly stronger to start your words. Watch out for those O sounds a little bit. And play around with pitches a little bit more. Those would be my big thoughts there. Okay. Thank you for sending that sentence. I do appreciate it. Okay. I think we're getting to close to the end of the files that people have sent me. If I've missed anyone, or if I do miss someone at the end, let me know. If Claritin tablets, yes. So I've been taking Claritin since before it was. Nowadays, it's over the counter. Like you can just go pick it up at the grocery store and stuff like that. But back when I was a kid, my allergies was super bad as a kid. Like like if I like rolled around in grass, like my arm would just like grow to like here, just like with like welts and stuff like that, because I was so allergic to grass. Thankfully, it's not that bad anymore. What I found with Claritin is that, just different. You guys are getting your allergy medicine updates. So like there's different like tiers of like allergy drugs. It's like they had like the old school older drugs that were really good, but they knock you out. Like for instance, in English, like there's one called Benadryl, which is if you have like bad allergic reactions, even if you go to the hospital, they'll give you some Benadryl and stuff like that to help. Which is good, but it knocks you out, right? You can't take that and like drive a car and you'll fall asleep. And then there's Claritin, which is not as strong, but also not drowsy. So I've been taking Claritin for years. What I found with Claritin is that, in my own personal experience, it's one of those things that, like, if you have sudden symptoms like right now, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get better like right away, Claritin's probably not going to do a whole lot. At least for me, it doesn't. Claritin's like one of those things that I need to do it like, I don't know, like 3-4 days in a row, kind of get it in my system. And then over time, it gives me more protection. But like if I need like immediate relief, it's not so much. That's what I found. Let me know what your guys' experience is. Anyone else here have allergies? Let me know what kinds of things are you guys allergic to. I'm basically allergic to, if it's green, I'm pretty much allergic to it. Like if it grows under the sun, I'm kind of allergic to it. But not as bad as it used to be. Also, the other thing is that, so like if I get allergies, the issue oftentimes isn't the allergies, it's the fact they give me like sinus infection. And then once you get a sinus infection, well, yeah, I mean, allergy meds aren't going to really help with that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. So I took some allergy stuff earlier, but it's kind of not going to do a whole lot, unfortunately. But that's okay. I've been dealing with this stuff for years. I'm a pro at taking it. Yeah. All right, a couple of last files. Let's check out this one.
Excuse me, sir. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Okay. I think this was this Barack? I think out of all the voice mods, like I think Donald sounds pretty good. I think Joe sounds pretty good, but the Barack one, I don't know. I'm not as convinced.
I'm here to.
Oh, not that one. That's Joe. We'll talk about Joe in a moment.
Excuse me, sir.
Actually, I want to talk about this really quick. So like we talked about this before, but it's like in English, you're the sound that you make when you're thinking is typically like or like and things like that. But it's also a sound that when people are learning American English, it's a sound that a lot of people are not quite getting right. So like instead of saying like or a lot of people are doing like and that's just not quite the right vowel sound. So it's this is a great indication of where your placement is. So it's one of the first sounds when I'm working with students. This is one of the first ones that I often start with, is the schwa. Okay. So whenever you're learning a new language, I would really recommend, find that sound that people use when they're thinking. So again, American English, that sound. And if you're having difficulty with this sound, just a quick kind of like walkthrough. We have if you go to our channel page and you go to our playlist, we have a playlist that says like 7-day schwa challenge. And basically it's every day for 1 week, I challenge you to watch a video. I have basically 7 videos. So you watch 1 video a day, and every day it looks at a different aspect of the schwa sound. So try that challenge out for 7 days and see how you feel at the end of it. I'm not going to say your schwa will be perfect, but I think you'll be a lot more comfortable making your schwa sound by the end. But one of the things that we talk about for getting that nice, clear open schwa sound is, of course, Mimo, we will work for you. I mean, we'll work for you. We'll also wait for you too. Great to have you. Just some things that can help with getting a kind of a clear schwa sound that's low and open with lots of air is, first of all, body position, body posture. Okay, you know, we're always talking about this, but when you're talking American English, your posture, in any language, your posture has an impact. In American English, you want to make sure your shoulders are down. Okay, shoulders down. Put your chest out a little bit. Basically, you want good posture. If you're talking a lot like this or like this and things like that, that's closing off your throat. It's raising your larynx and not allowing enough air to get through. Okay, whereas if we have good posture, it allows our larynx to drop a little bit, allows our throat to open up more, and it allows us to get more air through. Okay, so that's the very first thing. Just try to keep your shoulders down. Some other basic tips. You want to try to get your face into a more neutral position. How do you know if you're in a neutral position? Well, these are the steps you want to follow. So no smiling, no being upset, just kind of like an expressionless face. And what are some things that you'll feel when you do that? Well, you're going to notice that your top teeth and your bottom teeth don't actually touch. There's a little bit of space between them. You're also going to notice that your tongue is going to rise a little bit. It's not going to touch the top of your mouth, but it's not going to be at the bottom of your mouth either. It's kind of like in between. Once you're in that neutral position, once you have your shoulders down, okay, what I would encourage you to do, open your lips just a little bit to let some air through and see if you can produce a sound from right here. So again, like, and if you still find it, you're going to like, see if you can drag the sound down. It's like, So again, I'm just taking the sound higher and then forcing it lower while also keeping the throat open. Okay, so just exercises you can practice, and then you can apply that to your thinking sounds. So for instance, like or and things like that. Okay, so just some tips for getting a nice schwa sound. I say all this because let's share our audio again. We get some schwa sounds at the start. That almost sounds like vocal fry territory. So you can get your throat to be a little bit too relaxed, and you'll know if you end up with a vocal fry where you start getting some cracking sounds. So compare like versus So again, that first one is normal. That second one is more of a vocal fry. It's like and to note that vocal fry, that crackling sound, there are some accents in American English that are using that more often. We're seeing this especially for women. You're not seeing it as much for men. You're seeing it more for women, especially women on like the West Coast, like California. A more common thing, like for instance, take a word like today and say like today and like things like that. I'm exaggerating a bit, but those sorts of effects are becoming more common. So I do think we're getting some vocal fry here. I would say maybe try to, I want to say tense your throat slightly. And I'm hesitant to say tense because there's a very fine balance here. You don't want to tense it so much that's going to like, it's more, things like that.
Excuse me, sir.
I like how you said, excuse me.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Sir, you could get a little bit more air on your R if you wanted. So it says, sir, or sir, excuse me, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Would you happen to have this?
Would you
happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? I think that in terms of stress patterns, I think that's a little bit unusual. So would you happen to have this? Or would you happen to have this? I think your stress would be more likely to appear on have than on this.
Would you happen to have this?
Versus would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this?
Do you
hear that? Also, watch out for N. The letter N is just such a tricky consonant sound. It modifies a lot of people's vowel sounds, and they're not even aware of it. So, anytime you have a vowel linking with the N, make sure that N, there's still enough air going through your throat, and that your placement's staying low. Okay, the N is a nasal sound. The air will go through your nose, but in terms of the quality of the sound, you still want your throat open. And that's where you're projecting from still. So instead of in, it's more in. n, n, n. You know, it's not n, n. It's n, 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 n. Do you hear that like e versus n? The other thing here too is that it could be that you're using a more of an e sound as opposed to a short I. So the difference between e versus so it's not e, it's more n. Okay. Right now it's kind of hard to tell if is it that you're using an e sound or is it that your n sound's making things tense?
Another color.
Another ka versus k.
Another color.
Do you that color versus color? Do you think you could have a little bit more schwa sound on color?
Another color.
Yes, just to know. Those would be my big suggestions there in terms of sound. Watching off some of those vowel sounds, some of those consonant sounds. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you so much for sending that, Joe. That's really you. Some comments here about vocal fries. I want to make that crackle sound. Make that pronouncing R's. Yeah, I think it's a pretty common experience. It's again, if you notice that you start doing it, you be like, oh, I need to kind of tense things just very, very slightly. Okay, because it just means that things are a little bit too relaxed. That is possible. Do they do it on purpose? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even know they're doing it. I mean, that's how a lot of these, in any language, you know, when you know, pronunciation features start taking hold. You know, a lot of people don't know they have an accent until people call them out and say you have an accent, right? So it's there's a video I like. Oh, I'll have to find it. There's a video where it's basically just a comedian who does a little skit about vocal fry sounds. But yeah, I mean, if you just Google or like YouTube, just type in like vocal fry and things, that you'll see lots of examples of it. But yeah, it's entirely on purpose, and I don't think people are aware they're doing it. It's just one of those phenomenons that linguists have noticed is happening. Again, and it's really weird because it's obviously not biological. It's entirely social because you don't see it across the country. You can speak American English fine without it, and also the fact that it is more common among women than it is among men. You know, so those are all interesting factors. Entirely social. Entirely social. But I always think that stuff's interesting. I don't know if you guys do, but I think it's pretty cool. Is this the one we just heard? Yes. Versus and this one here.
I'm here to perform a song for you guys.
Oh man, singer's doing his thing. Is that gonna happen? Oh my gosh.
Come on, man, don't boo me. Country roads, take me home. Whatever. Bye.
Great song, classic. Brings tears to my eyes. I don't even have anything to say. I'll play it one more time.
I'm here to perform a song for you guys. Come on, man, don't boo me. Country roads, take me home. Whatever. Bye.
I did feel like when you were singing that, I thought your placement was able to stay pretty low and open. So I applaud you on that effort, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you. Oh no, did I miss one? I think I totally missed one. There's two I need to check out. Did you send it? Is that the same one as before, Emmanuel, or is that a new one? Hang on, let me hear this. Just checking some files really quick, guys. Give me one moment.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Okay, and so there's that one. There's this one.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Okay, sounds the same. I feel like we're missing I feel like I'm missing. Did I get both of Marcos's? One sec.
You won't say worthier opponent.
I think that's the one we heard. So I'm not sure what's going on with the audio. Or not the audio, but the files.
Would you happen to have this in another column?
Okay, I think that'll be better. Okay. Okay, so we have Emmanuel's, we have Marcos's, and potentially. Cool, I have it now. Emmanuel's, thank you for sending that. Okay, and also for Mimo, if you're sending a file, keep me posted on your progress. I want to make sure we get it. And by the way, if you want to send a file, there's still a little bit of time left. Okay, we would love to hear your pronunciation. If you go to the top of the chat box, you'll see this link. You can also look at the video description. Okay, once you go there, you'll see all the instructions. That way you can send in your own pronunciation files and we can listen to them and give some suggestions for how to sound more natural in American English. Rumeza, if you're watching, where's your file? Come on, people. Come on. Let me share my screen again. Let's see who we got. This is either Emmanuel or this is Marcos.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Watch out for color again with that schwa sound. The schwa sound's killing people out here.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Do you have color versus color? Color.
The color?
I want to hear another.
Have this in another color?
Another. I think on another, your schwa sounds are okay.
Have this in another color?
Another. I think it helps that another is not being stressed.
This in another color?
And another. So you're able to, you're kind of reducing it so it's going faster. But yeah, definitely on color, you want to get more of a schwa sound because it's not ka, it's more k, color.
In another color?
Not the first part.
Would you happen to have this in an...
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? I don't think it's very likely you get to get the stress on this. I think it's more likely you get on have. Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? I think those are going to be more common ways you'll hear that heard. I could be completely wrong. You know, you guys can go to like youglish.com, type in the phrase like happen to have this, and kind of see how people say it. But I think a lot of times like have is actually going to have the heavier stress than this, if I had to guess. Because like have this sounds a little bit too firm to me, personally.
Would you happen to have this in another... Would you happen...
Would versus would. I do think on would you could probably get a little bit more air. So it's like would more would.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Yeah, those are gonna be my big suggestions. You know, for a lot of the things I mentioned, because there's a lot of reductions and things like that, they're not so big a deal like would. But color is definitely a word that you want to work on that schwa sound. Get that as schwa, and I think the sentence will sound pretty good. Okay, play it one more time.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Oh yeah, and change the stress on this because I don't think it's going to be as common. Marcos, thanks for sending that. Mimo, okay, let's listen to manuals first, and I'll scout that.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Okay, I see you're playing around pitches, a little exaggerated.
You won't see a word.
And you won't see a.
You won't see a worthier.
I like what you're doing pitch though. And you won't see. So like it sounds a little forceful, sounds a little strong, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay. And you won't see. You know, you don't necessarily have to go so high on the won't. Okay.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
I like what you're doing pitches again.
You won't see a worthier.
You won't see a word. Won't see a word. I like that progression of like kind of high and lowering. I think it sounds pretty good. Nice work there.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
How about opponent?
Your opponent.
Po.
Your opponent.
A po versus a po. I do think that you're a little tense on high on that O sound there. Po versus po. Opponent. It's just a note there, so you can get that a little lower, a little bit more open. Worthy your opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, those are going to be my big suggestions there. Yep, nice work. If you have any questions about that, be sure to let me know. Okay, those would be my big comments there. Okay. Our singer is a gift. Yes. Yes, he is. A true gift. Send us so many. Okay. Mimos, I see yours. Perfect. Gee, technical solution. Oh, man. This sounds super professional. I teach my name is Gaurav. Okay. Cool. Hello. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you. Hope to see you in future streams as well. If you want to send us a pronunciation file, there's still a moment. There's still time. And what you need to do is you need to go to this document here. It's at the top of the chat box. Okay. It's also in the video description too. Okay. But Gaurav, it's great to, regardless of whether or not you send audio, it's great to see you here. And again, hope to see you in future streams as well. And Emmanuel, yes, I can tell you've been working on pitches. That's great. That's what we like to see. You know, don't just do the same things over and over again. Experiment, try new things. Put everything we talk about during these live streams into practice. Okay. Give me 1 second. I just want to check out Mimo's files. It was from Iraq. That's what's up.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
I'll give me to repeat.
Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color?
Okay, some intonation things I think we'll mention. Great. Okay, Mimo, thanks for sending that file. Let's take a listen to what you got, man. I think there's some helpful things that we can discuss. All right, first one.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You put a lot of weight on worthier, which isn't bad. I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad thing. It's not.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Let's see a worthier opponent. Won't see a worthier opponent. Won't see a worthier opponent. Again, like I said before, there's certainly you can make a case that Worthier deserves the stress. There's some situations where it certainly would. Okay, so I won't argue about stresses. I think that's okay. Other things.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Some things I like. I like how you link won't.
You won't see a
won't see, like you won't see. So you're using like a held T, link with your S sound. I think that's great. So instead of won't see, more won't see, won't see. Good. I like your held sound there. Sounds pretty good.
You won't see a word.
I like how you say C as well. You know, this E sound tends to be such a tricky sound for a lot of people. A lot of people are making it really tense, kind of more like what you would find in your native language, like E, like C versus C. You know, I like what you're doing here. Lots of errors coming through.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Worthier, I think it sounds pretty smooth. You know, that can be a tricky word to say, especially linking it to the next word as well, like worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, I really don't have a whole lot to say. If you're looking for things to experiment with, try stressing different things. Try stressing opponent heavier. Try removing the stress on worthier, or at least weakening it. Kind of see how that sounds. Also, you could try removing the stress on won't. You know, because it's not like you have to have that stress. You know, it doesn't need to be like you won't see a worthier opponent. It could be you won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, and I think you have a decent. I don't think you're using like a ton of pitches, but I think you're using enough to add some contrast and variety, so it's not sounding flat.
You won't see a word.
Yeah, you won't see it. One thing, if you want to add even more, just on that like see, you could drop that pitch and just a little bit, just to add even an extra little bit of contrast.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, this is all nitpicky stuff, just kind of things to experiment with. I think the general sentences sounded pretty good. And I know you put the second one at the end here.
You won't see a worthier opponent. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this? You know, I'm trying to think of like a context. Like, can this work with the intonation patterns and the stress patterns you're using? Yes, but what's kind of the implied meaning?
Worthier opponent. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this? This makes it sound like, you know, if I'm saying it like this, would you happen to have this in another color? Like, there's a couple of situations where I could use this. One, if it's like, I'm like frustrated, but still trying to be polite as I'm talking to like a worker. Like, would you happen to have this in another color? Like, please, like, can you just do this? Just check it for me. I'm tired. I'm having a long day. Can you just do this and see? That's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting. Like, if I use that sort of intonation pattern.
Worthier opponent. Would you happen to have this in another color?
It's like, look, do you have it or no? Okay, but a little bit more polite, a little friendlier. That's kind of the vibe that I get when I hear that. If I wanted something that's a little bit more neutral.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
I think I would change stresses a bit.
Would you happen to have this in another?
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this?
Would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? I think it's the following intonation on this. Let's make it sound a little firmer.
Would you happen to have this in a?
Would you happen to have this? Versus like, would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this? Also, same thing with like have.
Would you happen to have this in a?
Have this, like fall, right? Have this. Really strong, really firm. Using a rising intonation on one of them could be a little helpful. Like, would you happen to have this? Or would you happen to have this? Would you happen to have this in another color? I think adding some rising intonation there can just make it sound a little bit more neutral or even a little softer.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
In another color. I want to hear another.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Another. This sounds a little strong.
This in another color?
Very good.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Another color. That one actually sounds okay.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Another. Yeah, maybe I'm being nitpicky. Okay, I think it's okay.
The color?
I would say color.
Have this in another color?
Color. I think your L sounds a little strong. Can you say color 3 times? Like color. And when if you find you're saying color, or things like that, or like color, like things like that, that means your consonant sounds are too strong. Okay, you really want to emphasize more of those vowel sounds like color. Okay, dark L's, keep that front of your tongue down. Okay, let the back of your tongue do the work. Color. So it's like color, or color. Just watch out for that for color.
Your opponent. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color? Color. Hear difference to like color and color. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Do you happen to have this in another color?
Color. So you have rising. You do have rising intonation. This is a yes/no question. So you can certainly use rising intonation. That's fine. One thing though is you could drag out your intonation a little bit longer. Right now it's kind of like cut off, like color, but it's very color. That's just again another way you can kind of soften this sentence. That way it doesn't. I don't know. It sounds slightly friendlier. Color, it's like a more general question. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
So very color, just really short. So if intonation patterns, rising intonation, falling intonation, it doesn't always have to be so sharp, like a sharp fall, like this, or a sharp rise, like this. You could drag it out more, like this, or this, so things like that, especially in neutral situations, can make things sound a little friendlier, a little bit less antagonistic. Okay. Let me see. Did it quickly. Happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. Hope those comments made sense. I know I'm missing some things. Sending a file. Okay. Let me see. If you have time, if you want to send in a really quick one, that's fine. You can do that. Add blank portrait. How to paste the link. Control C, Control V. I think also on Vocab when you record something, it allows you to, I think it gives you like a share link. Okay, I've seen a couple new files here from Review. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Would you happen to have this?
Okay, we checked that one. I'm just scouting these pronunciation files really quick. Give me a moment.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Oh, wow.
You want to in Worthier opponent.
Okay. Review, if you are in the chat, I need you to resend your pronunciation files because they are super, super choppy. To give you an example of what I'm hearing, and I don't think that this is what you want. Give me a moment. Okay, you guys may want to turn down your volume just a little bit. This is what I'm hearing right now.
Would you happen to have this?
Like I can hear the individual words, but it's so choppy and disjointed. I wouldn't be able to give effective feedback for those. Okay, so if you want to take a moment, resend those files. I'll be happy to take a look at them. Okay, and if not, I understand that too. But it would be great to hear you. Okay. Review if that was you. Sorry. Okay. If it doesn't work, yeah, definitely some mic issues there. I think that yeah, if you want to try sending one more just to double check and see. I'm trying to think there's other ways you could do it. Otherwise, it just may not be the best day for sending audio files. Okay. We're going to wait for them to see if they can get the file. Hopefully it works out okay. But yeah, in the meantime, like I said, guys, if you are joining us for the first time, let me know. Say hey. Be like, hey, I've never been here before. Or be like, hey, I've gone to every single one of these. Every single one. And things like that. Let me know. Just great to see you guys. We do these things again every single Saturday. A quick reminder too, as we're waiting for our last pronunciation files to come in. If you're liking this, if you're finding this helpful, we do pronunciation practice like this every single day in our pronunciation group on Telegram. If you go to patreon.com/fluentamerican, you can join. You can also join by becoming a channel member on YouTube. Okay, you can just click join channel, like that button like right below here, and that will give you the option to join us for a month to give you access to our Telegram channel, Telegram group, where every day we give pronunciation feedback and things like that. Okay. And like I said, as always, we use the same pronunciation document every single live stream. Does not change. So if you're watching on the replay, or if you're watching us right now, you're just kind of lurking in the background, but you don't want to be seen. You don't want to be hurt. I totally understand that. But maybe in the future, you'll change your mind. We use the same document every time. So save it, and you'll be able to send in your pronunciation files. Question from Emmanuel. It says last winner's winners. Last winner's winners. Last winner's winners. T sounds is not difficult. Last winner's winners. I think it can be. I think part of the tricky thing is just context. It's not. How often would I say this sentence? Like it's just kind of like an unusual combination. Possible, yeah, but just not super common. And so I think that's part of the issue. Why, even if you had a different word than winners, like if you had like last September's winners or last year's winners, but it's weird to say the last winter's winners. That's like, or like last spring's winners. Like it's weird to pair that with a season. So I think that's part of the difficulty with the phrase, in addition to the fact that winter and winter would sound the same for a lot of people. Okay, if you wanted to make sure, for clarity's sake, you could always add that T back, like last winter's winners and things like that. So if we were discussing the Winter Olympics, how would I phrase that? So last winter's winners. I still probably wouldn't say like last winter's winners stuff for the Olympics. I would probably say something like last Olympic winner, or like last Olympic winner, winners. I feel like you need to add the Olympics somewhere in there. Otherwise it might be a little too general somewhere. Honestly. Yeah. Just not a super common phrase. But yeah, I mean it's I agree. I think it could be difficult to understand, especially like if you just like, you're just like walking up the street and you see a friend and be like, hey, what's up? You're like, hey, not much. What's good with you? It's like, oh man, I was thinking about like, like last winter's winners. You'd be like, wait, what? Like, what are you talking about? And then you have to be like, like the winners from the last Winter Olympics. So like context is gonna be crucial for getting that to sound more natural, honestly. I think it's just a tricky combination.
Would you happen to have?
Yeah, I'm checking out reviews files from before, and they just it's a cool audio effect. It's just not probably the one that you intend. Okay, give them another minute to send an audio file. Besides that, like I mentioned too, keep an eye out on the channel. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to post a whole lot on the community tab and things like that. But we have a video coming out tomorrow where we are going to be, I and a special guest are going to be taking a look at potentially the British accent that is closest to American English. There are actually a lot of similarities between it, and I was certainly not expecting them. Okay, so we're doing one video is coming on my channel, one video is coming on his channel. I think the video on mine is going to be focusing on T sounds in this British English pronunciation. And the other video is going to focus on L sounds. Okay. All right. Review of, unfortunately, man, I'm still not seeing a file. I do think I have to run. go check on my parents, make sure my son's okay, make sure they're, more importantly, my parents are okay. I'll give review if he's posting it right now. I'll give him a second to do that. But it looks like he is. Look at this. It's like watching the Google Doc sheet. People having internet issues. Yeah. But like I said, my parents are watching my son, and this is somewhat of a new experience. They haven't, just with like the virus situation, the way the world is, it hasn't been the easiest to make it out to Philadelphia to see them.
You want to be a worthier opponent.
Yeah, this lag is pretty bad for the audio. I'm not gonna lie, I'm listening to these files too.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Hey, this first one. Okay.
You won't see a...
We got one. We got one. All right, I'm going to share my screen, share my audio. I'll get some quick feedback for this. Okay, great.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent.
Okay. So you give me a couple different stresses, right? So this first one,
you won't see a worthier opponent.
Kind of just one stress focusing on won't, and I'm okay with that. You won't see a worthier opponent. I think that's perfectly fine.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent. We'll see. I think this one is going to be much less common. Possible, obviously, but not as common. I think the first one is going to be way more frequent. So let's kind of just focus on that first one. See if there's other things that we notice.
You won't see a worthier.
You won't. It sounds to me like your vowel sounds are a little bit closed off. It sounds to me like our placement may be more projecting from our mouth. When again, you want this to really be projecting more from the throat, a little bit more open. Pay attention to, especially like you won't.
You won't see.
You won't versus you won't. Okay, especially on that O sound on won't. Just try to say like oh, whoa, won't, oh, whoa, won't. Making sure again it's staying open. In the throat, enough air is coming through. Because right now it's just a little closed off.
You won't see a worthier opponent. You won't.
See if we're hearing that also on opponent.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Opponent. It sounds to me on opponent is slightly more open. Okay, so I'll just say on won't, so you can get that a little bit more air through.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
I do like how he's doing worthier. Again, I think it sounds pretty smooth, going from that R to that TH and things like that. Okay, yeah, so I think the big thing is going to be like you won't. And pitches.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
I like your going down pitches, like you're kind of like declining. It's like worthier opponent. Like that's going down. I like that aspect. It's helping reinforce the one stress on won't.
Opponent. You won't see a worthier opponent. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Another. How about another? I want to hear that again.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Another. I think I'm being very nitpicky. I do think you get a little bit more air on the sound. Another color.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color? Again, if you're, as always, like I said, there's no context, but I think that, if you were actually asking this to a client that worked at a store, again, like I mentioned earlier, rising intonation, you probably would want to drag it out a little longer. I said color, more color. Would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color? Notice again, just a little higher on that pitch, a little bit more of a rise. Okay, color. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Because again, if you use this sort of intonation pattern that you're using, it can suggest frustration, or it also can imply that there is no other option, but you're just like double checking. Like, I don't think that you can, or like, I don't think that you have this in another color, but maybe there's a slim chance you do. Do you happen to have this in another color? I don't think you do, but maybe. Do you happen to have this in another color?
You happen to have this in another color?
Okay, that's kind of one thing that's implied with the intonation if you kind of keep it short like that. If it's a general question, like you don't know the answer, like yes or no, then you could probably rise a little bit more. Do you happen to have this in another color?
You won't see another color? Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have... Again, this pattern probably not the most common. Okay. Maybe they didn't hear you. Like maybe they thought like, oh, what did you say? Like, did you say, did you want to have this in another color? And you're like, no, did you happen to have this in another color? Like, it sounds like kind of like clarity, to clarify.
In another color? Would you happen to have this in another color?
Notice also too with the intonation pattern change there, because you're changing it to a statement. Like, no, I didn't say that. I said this. Do you happen to have this? Okay.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color? So this is if you say it like this implies that
this in another color. Would you happen to have this in another color?
Would you happen to have this in another color? What this implies is that you're going through a list of options and you're trying to see which ones they have and which ones they don't. Like for instance, like, would you happen to have this in a size smaller? Would you happen to have this without the stripes? Would you happen to have this in another color? You know, like it sounds like you're kind of going through a progression.
Color? Would you happen to have this in another color?
Yeah, and notice again, and that's especially with the falling intonation there, that makes it feel like it's a part of, like, say, a list or something like that.
Would you happen to have this in another color?
Like we talked about that.
You won't see a worthier opponent.
Yeah, so I'm going to pause this there. Hopefully some of those interpretations of just intonation and meaning come clue with semantics. Okay. But yeah, but I think you're doing lots of interesting things with the stress. I appreciate playing with the different stresses and playing with the intonations, because those have a huge impact on sound and they have a huge impact in meaning. You know, it's the same sentence every time, but just by changing the stresses and changing the intonation patterns you're using, it changes the way that people are going to understand what you're saying. You know, it can make it a question. It can make it a statement. It can make you sound angry. It can make you sound neutral. Okay. So again, if I were saying the sentence in like a neutral situation, just generally asking a question for both of those sentences, the first one, again, you want to see a worthier opponent. You want to see a worthier opponent. And the last one, would you happen to have this in another color? Would you happen to have this in another color? Okay. So those would be the ways I would say it. All right. And, oh, we have some notes too about vocab and things like that. Pre-recorded phone, vocab is faster than trying to record on the spot. Is that true? I was not aware of that. I've only ever, whenever I've used vocab, it's always just been on the spot. But that makes sense. Yeah. Some insights there. Cool. As always, guys, thank you so much for spending part of your Saturday with me. I know you have so many options when it comes to American English pronunciation. So the fact you're spending it on Saturdays, 1:30 p.m., at least Eastern time, at the Schwab Mill, where we take a look at your pronunciation. We're trying to craft your accent, target your pronunciation, things like that. I really appreciate it. Keep an eye out for our video tomorrow. If you want to help the channel, if you see the video pop up, click on it, watch it all the way through. Those things are immensely helpful to getting videos to promote on the channel and things like that. Okay. Oh, sorry if it was all caps. I don't know why. Nightbot, behave. Be good. All right, guys. You guys take care. Have a good day. Have a good night. Good afternoon. I will see you next Schwab Mill. Take care.